Hello and welcome all viewers, listeners, and supporters of Brutal Extreme Music to the Mendo Podcast, episode 2. My name is Austin Spence, vocalist and bassist for the band Embryonic Devourment, along with my friends and co-hosts, Bryon Stiky of Sticky Tips Graphics, a veteran of organizing Mendocino County's best metal shows. We also have Luke Boutiette, drummer for Embryonic Devourment, here to answer all drum questions and philosophical matters. We got Adam Weber of the band Infex and former guitarist of Embryonic Devourment. We also have a very special guest, founding OG Embryonic Devourment band member and friend with us to talk about the early history and formation of Embryonic Devourment as well. Lauren Pike, great to see you, brother. It's been a long time. It's so awesome to have you with us, man. How you been?
Good, thank you. I've
Awesome.
been good, man. Just living in the Great White North, trying to stay warm.
Yeah, it's got to be pretty cold out there right now, right?
Yeah, it's not too bad. Actually, this time of year, it's pretty nice. We don't have any snow, so it's nice. About 50 degrees today.
Nice.
Same here.
But where exactly are you at?
I'm up in Michigan.
Oh, wow. Yeah, that's a ways off, huh?
Yeah. Nope, I'm out here. That's for sure. Now it's been pretty nice this year. I mean, thank God for global warming.
Yeah, global warming and the weather's great.
Yeah, we're having unseasonable weather right now. It's about 30 degrees warmer than it's supposed to be. So yay for us, but it'll get cold here pretty soon though. But here's a view out of the window.
That's not what I figured Michigan would look like, honestly.
Little suburbia,
A little less white.
Yeah, a little less white than you'd think. But I'm happy since I really don't like the snow.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'd rather be out in sunny California, but we're here in the north, so.
Yeah. Well, hey, man, sometimes when you're in a different environment too, that can have effect on, playing music and writing ability and stuff like that too, man. Like the black metal guys out in Norway, they were way out there in the frosted fucking north and shit, and
frosted tundras.
Yeah, and they came out with some sick shit. So I mean, hey.
Oh yeah. Well, obviously my style stemmed from here, and it stemmed from that cold, dark, that cold, dark realm that you want to have for inspiration, I guess, for metal especially.
Yeah.
But yeah, now it's been pretty good here though. Just been working a lot. Haven't been playing a lot of music, that's for sure. But our metal scene pretty much died around here. I mean, you've got a couple of promoters around here, but not a lot's going on.
Yeah.
I've heard that.
And I mean, with COVID and stuff too. I mean, that's been kind of rough on everything.
Yeah. There's some local guys that do shows around here. They're probably more like metalcore, stuff like that. Diet metal.
Yeah, definitely.
But I haven't went to any shows around here. I mean, yeah, COVID obviously stopped a lot of that stuff from happening. I mean, there's one venue left around here, and they throw shows. It seems like they've been throwing them on every weekend for the last couple months now, but I haven't went down there to any of them or anything. But yeah, pretty quiet around here.
So I've talked to other friends that live in other areas that are similar to there or near there, and they'll kind of have the same thing to say, but there's not a huge metal scene in that part of the country. And it seems like there would be a predominant metal scene in that part of the country, given the terrain and the, just the environment and the.
There's definitely bands out there, but they seem to venture outside of Michigan really fast once they get going. Like there's a band from out there called Battlecross, actually, which is
I've heard of them.
a relatively big band, but they're off touring, the world and other places, and
do they finally do something with themselves? Good for them.
Yeah, I think they're still chugging it out and doing some stuff. But anyways, getting back to things, when we last left off from episode 1, we were talking about the early Mendo County metal scene, the bands and history of it all, basically, and we discussed bands like There was a band Adam mentioned called Triax with Luke's brother, actually, Matt, and Marco White. And then there was also Adam's band, Dirge. We got into some of those stories, and Adam, after all that was said and done, had left to SF and started the band Oxygen. And I had actually just moved up to Mendo around that same time, finishing up my last year of high school, which is pretty much where I met Luke. And so kind of basically taking it from there, just wanted to talk a little bit about that and touch on that. When I moved up north, I met Luke in high school, and we kind of we messed around with a band called Blue Puke. Did like one or two shows. I think we even named the band Blue Puke because there was another artist from around here called Blue Luke, who was doing his thing, which he's actually
He's still around.
Went really far.
Yeah.
He's jamming with fucking the Marleys now. So I mean, he's outdone us all in that regard. But so me and Luke met. We started a band called Blue Puke because Blue Luke was playing shows, and we thought it'd look funny to have Blue Puke on the same flyer as Blue Luke. We ended up doing a show together. And that was with Owen Renfert of the band formerly Nation in Flames. Yeah. So that's how.
Honestly, that was one of the coolest band names, I think. Really, even still today, we could use a Rage or a Nation in Flames to, really, I think now would be a good time for that.
Definitely ahead of its time, yeah.
It's definitely the right time. If those guys came back, they might actually be able to do something.
I've tried to talk to them about getting back together and at least recording a couple songs, because I've learned how to record a little bit. Nothing that really sounds good, but it would be good for them to at least get something on recording.
Shit, but remember Yield Scabbard and the Fostax?
The 6-track.
I mean, it actually came out pretty good. I still have some of those tapes.
Nice.
Yeah, I do. I have a couple of those tapes that we did all the handmade sleeves in and shit. I mean,
That's killer.
That actually didn't have
DIY.
it didn't have a horrible sound to it. It was real raw, but I mean, you think about it.
Well, anytime we did stuff like that, we're just stoked to have something that was recorded. I mean, back then, it was off of a fucking 8-track player recorded or some shit, and we're like, yes, we have a demo.
Oh man,
home stereo with a little square hole on the home stereo, and it said mic next to it, and that was our microphone. We recorded two tapes that I remember, and one of them was actually pretty good, but they're both long gone now.
Right.
But,
well, you remember when we first made like our first CD? We're like, wow, we have a CD. We've done it, boys.
I know.
now let's go burn a bunch on our computer.
Yeah.
That's our CD pressing.
How many hours do you and I sit there, Luke, fucking burning individual CDs?
I've done so much of that.
We got some fucking CD burner from like Fry's Electronics. It was just this, square thing with the drawer, and we were like, and it had like 4 different speed selections, and we were just cranking them out. And those were the days.
Yeah, no shit.
God, that stuff sounded terrible. I thought just the way I played, not so much the recording.
Yeah, man, and I mean, for all our viewers and listeners at home and stuff, Nation in Flames, man, like those guys were
raw punk rock.
They were pioneering the Mendo County punk rock scene back then, and it was hard, abrasive shit, and they had a political message.
It was like them in the Process and another band maybe called Loose Change, and that was
Loose Change. That's right, man.
That was a band. A guy named Sean Travis, who plays in I think Love Equals Death now. He fronted that band.
Nate Doherty was the drummer.
Yeah, he's also a tattoo artist now.
He's a great drummer,
but he's got a tattoo shop in Ukiah.
Huh. That's cool. Yeah, that was a little bit before my time around there.
Yep. But you came on the scene just a little bit after me and Luke had formed Blue Puke. In fact, one of my friends came to me and was like, Austin, you'll never believe it. I saw this guy at the hardware store wearing a Cannibal Corpse butchered at birth shirt. And I was like, what the fuck?
You're like, where?
Yeah, I was like, I knew
Who is this guy?
I knew I had to seek you out, bro. I was like, I gotta find that guy. I bet he fucking plays an instrument or something.
It's like looking for the one-armed bandit or something,
Yeah. Sure enough, fucking yeah, we ended up meeting, dude, and Lauren, to take it back a little bit further, after Blue Puke did its thing, I actually moved back down to LA, and I started a band called what was it, Infest and Corrupt. And then I decided LA wasn't working for me. It's tough to make a living down there. It sucked pretty much. So I moved back up north. Me and Luke got reacquainted, started hanging out, and I actually met you, Lauren, somehow.
Luke.
How did that happen?
I don't know, 1,000 pounds of weed later, I'm not sure. How did that happen? We met up, I want to say I met Hayden first.
Really?
Skinner
and AJ.
No shit.
I met those two guys first, and then I think I may have met you after I met AJ, but AJ introduced me to Skinner. And then I want to say we may have met over at AJ's old house in that trailer park, where he was living there with Denise.
Oh yeah, I think you're right, dude.
Possibly. I don't think I can really recall the first time we met. Like I said, too many joints later, man.
Yeah. Well, I remember hanging out with you and I was like, man, do you play guitar? And you're like, oh yeah, man, me and my buddy Greg, we had a band out in Michigan before I moved out here. I'm like, oh shit. And so, naturally we started jamming, and
yeah, and I started our old place out at the what is the trout farm or whatever it used to be.
Yeah. And there was actually, I think after that, we had a little jam session at your place in Willits. You had a little drum set in the garage, I think. Remember Noble lived there, but
yeah.
Fucking, and that's where we made one of the very first songs, and we were like, okay, we need a drummer. So we fucking we got Jonah of Nation in Flames.
Yeah, well, there you go. Yeah.
That's who was drumming for Yield Scabbard first, pretty much.
Yeah.
But then we decided, that's not gonna really cut it, because we want grindcore, and he was a little more along the punk lines, and respectively, of course.
At that point in his life, I don't think he was as serious into music as what we wanted to be, and I think that was probably the biggest deterrent there. He was always a good drummer, and he definitely had more of that punk feel to his style, obviously.
Yep.
But yeah, so he didn't. I think we only practiced with him once, maybe twice. I don't know. It wasn't very many. I know it wasn't very many times because he was busy or whatever, couldn't show up. But
I remember we did a practice with him out at the hog farm way back in the day.
That's right.
Yeah.
Oh, you're
How'd
right
them hippies handle that shit?
Well, nobody really. I think we're up at Downey's place, maybe.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah, because during that same time, I had actually, speaking of AJ, I had a band, you guys all know, Cerebus, with those guys, AJ and Louie, and but I was noodling around with other styles and concepts at the same time, and so when me and you started jamming, we needed a new drummer because Jonah wasn't really working out. And I was like, hey, man, this guy, Luke, we played in a band called Blue Puke together. You're like, yeah, man, invite him over. By that time, I think you had lived right down the street from Harvard Hall. You kind of had your studio happening out back, or you were working on it anyways.
Well, I think I first met Luke. I want to say we had talked about him. You and I talked about him. I remember that. And then Jill, I think, brought him over to my place in Willits right before I moved to Laytonville.
Oh, shit.
And we hung out for a bit. We didn't jam or anything. We just hung out, smoked some joints, whatever. And then after that, shortly after that, I moved to Laytonville, right? I lived right across the street from the Harvard Hall and built the studio. And
that was the sickest studio.
Fun, man. There's a lot of good times in that place.
Yeah. I think we fried on acid in that studio.
It was cool. We had a fucking place to play. That was the cool thing. That was, that's a must, man. I've learned over the years. I mean, if it's hard to just sit there and kind of jam by yourself, because I think music's supposed to be a group effort. Starting together, playing and figuring things out as you go. And by yourself, it's kind of, I don't know, it's kind of
your solo thing.
Huh?
It's your solo project. It's
Yeah.
the Adam Weber band or the Lauren Pike band. But
right.
Yeah, I agree with you.
You become a Malmsteen or a fucking, you become one of these guys that can't have a band because, I don't know, that you just spent so much time by yourself or something. I'm not sure. It's kind of that's a little bit of a lonely journey as far as music goes, I think. So no, that was cool. That was cool. We had a gathering spot. We had a spot where we could invite people to come in and try to, it was, it's where we got our start.
Yeah, man, those were some fun days, dude. Yeah, I think first and foremost, and a lot of bands miss out on this concept. I think, in my opinion, but we were friends before we were all jamming together. It was like we already got together on a bro level, which is highly important. Whereas some musicians now, they're just like, oh, you like music? I like music. Here we go. And that's cool too. But it's nice when you have that friendship with your bandmates and stuff.
It's a brotherhood.
Beforehand.
You have to have that bond. The four of us that are on this video chat right now will have a bond our entire lives, not because of just one particular thing, but because of what we all went through together. The markings for our tribe.
We have the tattoos.
That's what I'm saying. The markings of our tribe.
Hell yeah.
That creates. There was. I mean, we had a pretty much an unbreakable brotherhood, even though we had our hard times too.
Definitely.
That's how it goes. I mean,
we were one of the bands that kind of sifted through the garbage and was still there. We were still making ourselves, making everybody else aware that we're still here. We live in the middle of nowhere, and somehow I can't
overcame that adversity.
Well, I can't start a band here in a city of 300,000 people, but for some reason in Laytonville, population of like 1,000 or some shit.
Yeah. The odds of that are intense, for me to wonder who this guy is wearing a Cannibal Corpse shirt, to, Luke being the brother of Matt, who had played in an earlier metal band called Triax. I mean, just the likelihood of that all falling into place in a town in the middle of nowhere is just like really odd.
Unheard of, really.
Yeah.
And what we did, we watched many bands form and fail, and we somehow still kept shit together, adapted. At a certain point when we decided we want to add an guitar player, and we finally got to work with Adam, which was something I wanted to do for years. Because when I first met Adam, I mean, he was a shredder, man. He could shred.
Definitely.
And,
one of the things,
but he had his own style, though. He didn't have a style that was drawn within a box, which really caught my attention. unlike a lot of other guys that tried to come and jam with us, and they were so in this little box, man, they couldn't create anything of their own if they tried. They could play other people's music great, but it was never something that really impressed me about anybody.
The blues box, the pentatonic, the blues box. Do I need to turn this thing up?
No, I can hear you, buddy.
Okay.
It was kind of choppy when it cut into you, but no, those were some interesting days. But we were going through changes. We were trying to adapt. We were trying to be a top tier predator animal, where there was a bunch around us that could have eaten us up in a minute.
Totally. I remember we were hungry for it back then. Definitely. We felt like, let's try a little harder, let's try and fucking really push this. I remember that. And, taking it back to that story though, so we got a hold of Luke. Now, when Luke came into the picture, that kind of revolutionized the sound we were trying to go for at that time, because Luke was a spastic drummer. You have a really original sound, Luke, when you play. I mean, you don't sound like any other drummer.
Well, I'll take it back a little bit too, and just because the odds of us all coming together in this little town were pretty small, and it happened. I didn't have much musical background of any kind other than a couple of high school band classes, and that's really where. So we were like smoking weed at lunch in high school when you first came there, and you were like, "Yeah, I've been playing for like 10 years. I've been playing music since I was a kid, and I like the hard shit, death metal and stuff." I was like, "Well, I've always wanted to be in a band, and I always wanted it to be heavy, And then I don't know, a few weeks later, you were in the band room, and I was on my way to another class, and I was like, "Fuck that! I'm going in there." And you had your guitar that day for or whatever, and I just jumped on the drums, and you got some distortion out of the amp, and we just started playing.
I remember that. Yeah.
Right from the very beginning, it sounded good. I barely knew what the hell I was doing, and you would play a riff, and then I would try to make something sound good to it, and we made up 3 riffs on the spot right there in the space of 5 minutes, and then of course Paula, the music teacher, comes in
Stop.
I was like, "All right, Lacey, you're not even in the class. You can't do that." And I'm like, "All right, later." So that was before. That was right, and then we started Blue Puke a little while later.
It's a funny thing, because I remember. See, Luke is such an inventive drummer. For people who haven't heard Luke yet, the thing is I remember during those days there was another good drummer in the high school too, and his name was Matt Woodbury. Now, this one time, for some fucking reason, there was a drum-off competition at the high school, okay? It was literally a drum competition. And fucking Luke had to go up against Matt Woodbury. And now Matt Woodbury, he's like John Bonham, he's just very, really loud and powerful, good-sounding drums, but very, And then Luke got on there and just fucking destroyed it. I mean,
I don't know.
People didn't know what to think, dude. It was awesome. I thought Luke won, in my opinion, but apparently Matt Woodbury won. I don't know what the fucking deal with that
was. It was a battle of the bands. There was different bands, and then there was bands, and then because him and his brother had their band. And so they did that, and then he also did his little drum solo, and then I didn't have a band, so I just went up there with my drums. And so I didn't win the battle of the bands, by myself. But I did put on. I was just making it up, as I went along, and I had 2 little drums that I kind of wrote, I guess, by myself at home. and like I'll start doing this and then I'll just start going off and then I'll come back to this type of thing. I was only 17, so
Yep.
and I'd never been in a band. I'd never had any real drum lessons of any kind.
Yeah, man. Good. Those were the good
And
days.
two music teachers, but they're like, just give me a beat, and listen to these bands and try to do those beats. But so high school was over. I graduated. You moved back down to LA. I went to college for a little while, stopped playing drums for a while, came back. You had already started another band by the time you came, because you came back before I did, I think. And you had Cerebus. You had started Cerebus with AJ and Louie. And you were playing drums, and you were playing really good drums, better than what I was, because I hadn't even really been playing. But so when you said, yeah, I want to start another band, and I already have a bass player and he's got a place to jam, I was like really stoked. And then that natural thing that happened, it kept happening with the three of us in Ye Old Scabbard, of just I don't know, you play a riff and then I've listened to it for a minute and then play something to it, and then if it's good, then we try to improve it. Sometimes that process takes a long time to write a song, but I don't know, it was unique for us and it was special. And that's definitely the way I look, like Lauren was saying just earlier, those people
Totally,
in the
man.
room playing and creating organic, the organic process of people working together. That to me is that's what it's all about.
Well,
Man.
It's like something I had, in my earlier days with Greg. Greg was always a good drummer. This guy was like a Neil Peart, man. And he really just was a phenomenal drummer when we were young. And he had this badass set, dude, 100 pieces. I mean,
I remember it.
Yeah.
I remember.
And he uses every one of those fucking pieces, and he uses them a lot. Real creative drummer. He's not, I wouldn't call him a grind drummer or he blast beats, does his thing, but he's got his own particular style for sure. And it was for him and I, when we started jamming, after we met, we just started jamming. It was kind of like that too. It was we're just sitting in a room, actually in my room, my bedroom upstairs. If we fucking set his big ass drum set up somehow in there, and set my amp up, and we just started playing. And actually at that time I was playing bass.
Oh, wow.
And it was just natural. Every time he went to change into something different, it was like I was inside his mind and I knew what he was going to change to. And I would start immediately we would change at the right times. And it was just
clicked.
Even after I got back here, I tried to create another band, obviously, when I moved back up to Michigan, not right off the bat or anything, but I not really trying to create another band, just a jam, because I was longing for it.
Totally.
And and it was the same thing. We get in a room, we're down in his basement, immediately just we start just creating this enormous sound, and it's something that you very few people in your life you'll ever meet that you'll have that with. That's a kind of a telepathic thing that 3 or 4 minds can mold as one.
Totally.
And you become the machine. You become automatic. Everybody knows what everybody's going to fucking do. And now all of a sudden it's easy. I remember when we were touring and we played we were, who the hell were we touring with? Maybe those guys from North Carolina.
Lecherous
Nocturne.
Yeah. We played down in Kansas. We played down in Topeka then, right?
At the Riot Room, I think.
Yeah.
Or was it? No, it was the.
Trap in Topeka. We played.
Yeah, you're right.
We played. We did it, and we played with a lot of bands, and we did this, but we would just fucking annihilate.
Yeah.
Everything be so fast and precise and perfect. Everybody. It was like you know, those are the times when we were really connected, where we were really
we were telepathically connected, and because of it, at that point in time, the four of us were on fire. Literally just had each other's back on every little thing. You guys knew what I was going to do up on stage, talking shit to the crowd, doing poems, doing all that stuff, and you guys would improvise in a way to where everything worked. It's there
was a certain flow to it.
Totally.
Yeah. But what we had was completely original. I've never heard anything like it before or since. And I listened to a lot of, serious metal radio.
Cool.
Like XM Channel 40 or whatever. And they play a pretty good variety of new shit, upcoming shit, and older shit, so it's kind of cool. And there's a lot of bands coming out. There's some cool bands, but there's some bands that have some really interesting sounds, but nothing like what we had, what we were doing. You just sit back and listen to Fear of Reality or something, and how much is going on there. I mean, it's extreme. It's an extreme amount of sound coming out of four people.
Well, there was a serious amount of growth that you and Luke had, which I'll take it back to. So, when we were doing the Ye Olde Scabbard thing, we wrote, I think it was like 8 or 9 songs of, we at that time already had a concept, just like, how we have a concept now with Ye Olde Scabbard. It was all pirates, know? And so, it's like, hey, let's write a song about pirates. Nah, fuck it. Let's write 8 or 9 songs about pirates.
Yeah, it was fun. It was great.
It was the shit. And so, but then I just felt like I wanted to drum at that time, like really seriously. After we had recorded that album, I was like, okay, I want to, kind of get back into drumming. And and Adam had actually just moved back to the area. Adam, you had moved back to Mendocino County after living in San Francisco for 5-6 years, something like that?
Probably closer to 10, I think. But
wow. Okay.
Yeah, bunch of stuff happened. I got a divorce and my mom passed away, and I was like, well, I'm not sticking around here. And my band was not doing so good. So I just kind of dumped everything out. And I initially talked to Lauren actually, and came out on a weekend, and we visited and hung out and stuff like that. And then
that's when we first met.
Yeah. And then
come over and shredded our faces off, then fucking disappeared. We're like, fuck this guy. Hey, look, we're burnt. We're like, because that's funny. Go ahead, Bryon.
Yeah. Anyways, it's once I kind of got settled back in the area, and I guess Austin was starting to do the drumming thing a little bit, and we got together and kind of did that same thing that you were talking about with Luke. Like we got together and jammed, and kind of that whole telepathic thing. Like he'd do a blast beat, and I'd write a super sick technical riff or whatever, and it was just fucking sick and brutal. And
at that time, we were like switched. Suffocation.
Dude,
we would be like suffocation.
It would like literally, you'd switch and I'd switch at the same time, and we're just like, oh, well. So that was the birth of Mummification.
Yeah. That was a sick band. You guys had a good sound.
Thanks,
good riffing. It was nice and tight, and it was a refreshing style, like Suffocation style.
Yeah. Well, meanwhile, while we were trying to,
quite as dark as those guys, just it's going to be hard to get as dark as Suffocation, but then you wouldn't want to do. But I mean, it had that feel to it where you could be like, yeah, this is fucking sick, good music.
Thanks, man. I appreciate that. And meanwhile, while that was happening,
you guys were doing your own thing. And
exactly. See, that's the thing is Mummification was a killer band, but I started having some problems with drumming after a while. I just couldn't do it with my left wrist for some reason. It just wasn't doing the technique that I needed to achieve quickness and the speed.
Well,
and I did it for a while. I did it for a whole album, and we did a bunch of shows, and it was fine. But after a while, it started giving out, and I just couldn't do it anymore.
Well, you were such a hard-hitting drummer that probably had a lot to do with it. Like, the impact probably just took its toll quick, and that was that. Yeah, and so during that time, I'm not sure how it happened exactly, but Luke and Lauren had decided we're not going to call this Ye Olde Scabbard anymore. We're going to call it Embryonic Devourment, pretty much. Mm-hmm.
And
that's what I've been waiting for. That was going to be my question: is when was Embryonic Devourment this entity? When did it be? Where's the very first moment of Embryonic Devourment?
Well, after that happened, when he wanted to pursue drumming and whatnot, I was still playing bass at the time, but behind the scenes, I was teaching myself how to play guitar. And I was teaching myself how to play the riffs. And so Luke and I started playing guitar and doing vocals, and we were a train wreck at best, but we kind of toured around on that a little bit, as a 2-piece or whatever. And then we just decided, what, fuck it. We're just going to sit in the shadows for a little bit and create something new, something completely different, something just so fucking brutal that it can't be denied. That was always our formula. And we didn't really, unfortunately, we didn't really care about what other people thought. We weren't creating this music for anything else. It was a very selfish thing on all of us, and with our music, and we were okay with it. But so that shift happened, and we said, okay, well, Ye Olde Scabbard, we're just gonna toss that to the side, and we're gonna come up with something new. And I started writing riffs, and we created a couple songs. Enough, I think, I don't know how many do we have, Luke? 3 or 4 songs, maybe.
Something like
enough
that.
to do the Headed by Volition album.
that's right.
Well, yeah, we played that.
Which out of both bands, out of both Mummification and Embryonic Devourment was the first to go to Juan Ortega.
Right.
Down in Pacheco.
Yeah, he got an album. We were so not ready to be in the studio. So not ready to be in the studio in those days.
What year was that? What year was this happening in?
Oh, that
2003.
2003. Yeah. And prior to, we've been
2001 was Ye Olde Scabbard, and then at the end of 2002 is when we decided to, because we had already been writing we had written a couple of songs that just me and Lauren wrote.
Yeah.
And we were like, this stuff's different. It's different. And it doesn't need to be about pirates anymore. Maybe some of it can, but we're going to branch out more. And so we had like Desanctifying the Mediterranean. That was like one of the first songs that we wrote together with nobody else.
Yeah, that's a sick song too, man.
Yeah.
So
after that, like 1 or 2 songs later, we dropped the Ye Olde Scabbard. We hung on to a couple of the songs that we thought were worth playing live so that we could play shows. We didn't play a lot of shows.
Probably, yeah.
But we did play some, and we had like Demons, Mutiny, and for a while the Seas of Gore, and some, I don't know.
Yeah,
maybe
we did
some others. But
So
we
needed
a little bit of filler, and then we completely end up completely dropping all those older songs. But when we had enough
songs were written, we started to drop the old ones, and
I think that's right around the time that when we first met was the shift from Ye Olde Scabbard to Embryonic. Maybe.
Yeah, I'm not sure what happened, but somehow,
we played
you
guys didn't. Nobody had heard anything about Embryonic Devourment. This was just and that up there, we were, like I said, we just wanted to keep our shit low profile, and we were just going to come out and be like, fuck it, here we are, And as a 2-piece, we were pretty brutal.
You held it down.
I remember that. Yeah,
really brutal. Down.
And my guitar rig set up, I devised a way to make it so we had a full sound with 215 and 412s.
bass tabs and guitar cabs.
And
I remember that, yeah.
I could have both of them on. And it was sick. We had a crushing fucking tone, and it was only us, so
you had to fill it up.
Well, somehow during that time, I had, you guys were like, hey, come to a practice, or you guys showed me a demo or something, and I was like, what the fuck? I was like, this shit is fucking brutal. And so
we ended up playing with a show with you guys up in that. I can't even remember this fucking property, but we were up.
I remember that. I remember
some fucking farm in the middle of nowhere, and you guys were like, "Oh shit, you guys were playing?" Because you didn't. I mean, Embryonic Devourment was on the bill, but nobody knew who the fuck it was. And so, so we showed up, and you guys were like, "Oh, what the fuck," and we all played or whatever. That's when you guys first heard it. I think that's when everybody first heard it, really.
Yep.
And then so. At the same time, we're now both Mummification and Embryonic Devourment. We're now growing, and we're trying to find another band member. We tried out a couple different people. We had
John in there at some point.
We tried out Aaron Ludeman. We tried out Johnny. Johnny was in the band obviously for quite a while. It was a great member of the band when he was there.
That's right. Yeah, around that time, I had heard about Juan Ortega. And I told you guys about it. I think I had mentioned it to Mummification too, but the thing was, I remember you and Luke were like, yeah, let's do this. Like, let's do this now. Like, schedule that studio time because, let's fucking do this. Yeah. And Johnny was in the band.
Yep.
And he figured, and you guys figured, maybe it'd be better if, had bass and let Johnny focus on the vocals. And I was all for it. I basically, at that point, I think I asked you or Luke, I was like, hey man, can I be in the band too?
Well, I think the way I remember how you end up rejoining into Embryonic.
It was before Mummification was formed. You rejoined you joined after we changed the name at Cerebus ended. And then you and Johnny Austin came and were like, you guys are doing some kick-ass shit here, and you need.
And then we made Johnny
play.
Band. You need the other half of your band here.
That's right. Johnny was in Cerebus. I forgot.
Johnny was in
Cerebus. And so you guys joined Embryonic Devourment together, and it was us four for a while. And then Adam got settled in, like he was saying. And then you were like, I want to get back to playing drums.
Yep.
And
okay.
So that was when Mummification formed, and you stepped away from Embryonic Devourment for a short time, but not before we did that demo.
Right. So then
pivotal demo.
The original demo
I remember the show that you had to stop playing drums at. I remember going back there because you were all fucked up. And
that was in Lake County.
And
I passed out. Yeah, I passed out and fucking vomited all over the snare. There was puke exploding off of the snare drum. I stood up, passed out. Somehow I wound up outside. I'm not sure what happened with that. Somehow I was outside all of a sudden.
Brought you out.
Woke up to people huddled all around me and shit. Like, drumming was outdoing me for some reason.
And you were down about that shit. You weren't able to play drums anymore. And Luke and I remember us talking about it, going, fuck it, let's see if you might be able to play bass or want to, play bass and sing or something. I think somewhere in that area too, Johnny. I want to say
dad at that time, and he ditched. I think
he moved down to the city.
On us, and it was. We could have made a different decision, but we made a decision that we thought was best for our band, because we weren't at that point in time. We were really getting into that. We want to be serious about this. Anybody that doesn't want to fucking show up, don't show up. Don't come 3 hours later, or don't, you know what I mean? Like we were playing, we were trying to practice, we were trying to become something, we were trying to do something, and especially out of there. I mean, we're in the middle of nowhere with no chance. To really do what we did, I think. But
totally,
we created that though, and all of us did. It was a huge combined effort. and we all created something special we got to share with the world. But so when you joined back up, and I think at that point you were singing and playing bass.
Yep.
And we were a 3-piece for a bit, and then we asked Adam if he wanted to join. I'm not sure how long.
It was shortly after we put out the Fear of Reality album. We did the Fear of Reality album as a 3-piece with Matt Sotelo from Decrepit Birth. He's the guy who engineered it, actually.
It was just before that. It was just before that. You guys had already recorded it.
Yeah.
And you decided to put me on the album sleeve as the live guitarist. So you guys had just got back. Mummification was, a lot of the other members were having problems committing, time and wanting to do take it to the extreme that I did, which was similar to what you guys were wanting to do.
Yeah, and on that note, after I left the band, I tried to, I really wanted to go out on good terms, which is where I found Sam Lanyon from the Military, and he's a killer musician and a great drummer as well as guitarist. I mean, everything extraordinaire. And said, hey Sam, take the drumming job, and Mummification continued, basically.
AJ ended up getting himself into some trouble, and it's like the constant revolving door. I mean, Alex was there, and then I think Mike ended up having to move or something like that, or and I was just tired.
Yeah.
And so somehow, I don't remember exactly what, but we all started talking, and I think that I can't remember if I was invited or I asked, or maybe it was a little of both, but I ended up getting a couple of the songs from the album before it was released out, and I kind of tried to learn part of I learned the first song on the album, which over half of it was wrong, but I knew the basic chord structure.
And you had also written lead sections to a lot of the stuff that didn't have leads, because we were so focused on the rhythmatic structure. And when you came in, you actually started writing leads over all these songs that we had written with Fear.
Yes. And I did.
That's when we started, coming out with some really killer fucking live recordings, which Hunter actually has a fucking huge collection of.
I did harmonies and stuff like that, where I thought, because you guys basically kind of gave me the freedom to, do whatever sounded good, even though it was already recorded. And so I just found cool spots to do little weird things, and it turned out pretty good.
Well, that was the freedom that the band, that's what the band's premise was, because we kind of started with kind of unorthodox, where the drummer's following the guitar player instead of a bass player, or, you know what I mean?
Right.
Totally.
Well,
Luke had this really elaborate style, and he would create different notation and percussion in spots where it gave us a fuller sound while we were just a 2-piece.
Mm-hmm.
So it was we were trying anything we could do to create sound. So it built us into a pretty solid songwriting machine.
Pretty dynamic.
Pretty dynamic and definitely different. Definitely different than what anybody was doing. And I mean, there could be. We've been compared with a very few bands in our time, and the couple of them we have been compared to. I think there may be some little tiny slight element here or there, but it's so slim, and it's just the way we wrote. We never played riffs twice. We played a riff once. We had all these great riffs and these songs, that we could have broken up and made probably 10 albums with all the actual riffs we had.
Definitely, man. One of the cool things about Embryonic Devourment is, even from the very first release, Beheaded by Volition, we sent that out to some record labels, just 5 songs, and boom, we got a bite from a record label all the way in Spain, Grotesque Music, and they wanted to release it. And so right away, I think we're like, that was encouraging, for us. So we're like, let's keep doing this. Let's write some more and push it. we came out with Fear of Reality, had Matt Sotelo from Decrepit Birth engineer that one, and sent that out and got assigned to Deep Send Records, which is a whole era unto itself, you know. And by that point, Adam was in the band. So we went down and we, you know, back to Juan Ortega from the Beheaded days, did Vivid Interpretations, which was a really, what some people, you know, say, I've, you know, just read a lot of our reviews and stuff. A lot of people think that's the craziest one, the fucking, you know.
There's a lot going on that album.
Yeah.
There was. It was a great album. Fear was a great album. I mean, maybe I'm partial because, you know, having a huge part in writing all this shit, but that was, at the time, I mean, that was everything that, I mean, I had like this black hole in my head, this, you know, like a hole in space, and notes would just come down and just come through me. It was just, you know, a lot of that shit felt easy, but it was so fucking complex, you know, and I don't even know if we realized how complex that shit actually was until we really started getting into going into the studio and trying to count this shit out. We're like, fuck.
I think we were so stoned, you know, me and you would get together and write these riffs together that would just like, by the time we were done with like a 6 or 7 hour session of writing riffs, it was like, whoa, dude.
No shit.
Like,
Can we remember this shit?
We would too. We'd write some crazy shit. And I mean, I'd sit there and just, you know, torment my wife in the morning on my acoustic guitar, writing all these sounding riffs. And she's just like, what the fuck? You know, like, it just, you know, comes out when it does, you know, and you got to grab it. That's the one thing I've learned as you get older, man, when you write those riffs and you don't really pay attention to it. And you think, oh, I'll remember that one. Fucker just goes, flies right away.
Nope. Yeah. Record it. You got to record it.
To me, it's just cool to sit here and. To me, it's just cool to sit here and listen to all this history of just this, you know, this one band.
well, you know, and the thing is, you know, with you, Bryon, you came into the scene, you know, at just the perfect moment, bro, because we were having a tough time getting shows, you know.
Well, that's the thing is, like, whereas I've listened to your history and how you guys came to this point of being this band, right? Like, that's a great history, but at the same time, you guys were kind of part of my history in my beginnings when I started doing what I do. I didn't know shit about shit. I didn't know a whole lot of bands. And when we put together the Redwood Metal Fest the first time, that was actually the first time I saw your guys' band play. I had heard of your band. I had heard, you know, some music from your band. And I think I'd only really met Adam, like, briefly, you know, at the 7-Eleven Club once. And then I think at another show once. And
I still got that shirt too, by the way.
Right on, dude. There's probably, hey, that's like vintage now. It's probably worth something. Maybe worth more when I die. But somebody else had suggested, you know, Embryonic Devourment, because I wasn't that familiar with your band when we were trying to put together this lineup for Redwood Metal Fest. And you know, that was my beginnings that started and brought me to where I'm at now. So like, I'm just appreciative that I can sit here and hear all this history of the band and how you guys got to.
Hey, right on, man. You know, back in those
you know,
early 7-Eleven Club days, you know, that was, see, one of the things is about our scene is it was tough even for us to get these local shows, because when we're describing to these, you know, venue owners what type of music we played, they're like, you know, so I started having to tell promoters like, oh, we play like heavy rock, you know, and then we'd get in there and they'd just jaw drop and be like, what the fuck is going on here?
Okay, they didn't like the name either.
Well, and it's just as hard for me to bring bands like that to a venue. You know, I mean, let's face it. You know, this is Mendocino County. A lot of it's just bougie, you know, Mendocino County. You know, it's like there's not a whole lot of, you know,
reggae music and all that shit.
You know, and yeah. So to like go to like a venue and ask for like a date, and they're like, oh, what bands do you want to bring in? And you say Embryonic Devourment. I mean, they literally want to know if you're going to eat embryos. I mean, like they literally, like they have no idea the concept, you know, of like that kind of music. So it's like, it's a hard sell, or at least it was back then. It's a lot easier now because, you know, that style of music has been around long enough that it's more accepted. But in the beginning, man,
I had
difficult.
I'm not, you know, I'm not gonna lie. I had to lie, you know, in order to fucking play shows. I'm not even joking. I mean, I remember one time, you know, this is when, you know, it was really tough for us to get a show. You know, these venues in San Francisco, so to speak. We wanted to play San Francisco really bad. they wouldn't give us the time of day. We weren't from around there. They didn't know who the fuck we were. They're like, hell fucking no, we're not booking your band. So, you know, I got this wise idea one time. I'm like, you know, I'm not going to say the name of the band, but there was a really cool band rolling through on tour, and we knew, you know, a sick fucking death metal band. And we're like, man, that'd be so cool to play that show. And I think out of fantasy, I made an email address with the band name as the email address, you know, like such and such band at yahoo.com, emailed the promoter and went like, yeah, we really want Embryonic Devourment on the bill.
Hey, it worked though, right?
Dude, next thing I know, they're calling me up. I guess Embryonic Devourment, you guys want to play the show? It's like, fuck yeah.
I remember when you guys played a Redwood Metal Fest at the Mateel. Like I said, I wasn't very familiar with your band. So when you guys started playing, I was like, holy crap, these guys are brutal. Jesus Christ, you know, like way more brutal than any of the other bands. And then, and then the next band up was Death Angel, right? And I remember when I was kind of standing backstage with the guys from Death Angel, and they were like, they kept looking at each other like when you started to sing, like they were like, you know, they were whispering to each other like, who is this fucking band? And I was like, oh, it's Embryonic Devourment. They're like, Jesus Christ. You're like, they were blown away by how brutal you guys were, you know? And I just thought that was awesome that, you know, here's this band that's this well-established, well-known band, you know, and like, they were just totally like oohing and on over you guys, you know, throwing down this crazy set, you know, up on the stage. But I mean, that was,
man, thanks.
But that's
incredible to hear, man. I'm humbled by that story, Bryon. Really, Death Angel, you know, I was just a little kid listening to those guys, man. That's insane.
What was sad
my memory of that show was someone came and was like, hey man, you guys have a little bit of weed, right? you're like weed band. And I was like, yeah, I got some weed. And they were like, well, think you could spare like a nug for Death Angel? I was like, dude, I was like, I'm gonna give you like this much for them, and all I ask is that you tell them that fucking it came from Embryonic Devourment.
Oh, fuck.
And fucking, I was hoping that, you know, maybe they would remember us. Just
for that. Cool.
It's great to hear that they saw us play and that they were, you know, impressed or whatever.
But that show was really, I mean, I'd done, you know, promoted events and shows before that, but that was like my real beginning as far as, like I said, what I do now. And like, it's cool that, you know, here we are all sitting about, like I said, talking about all this history, and like, that was kind of the moment when I jumped on your train. And,
it's so good you came along, you know, Bryon, because the thing is, you know, with those 7-Eleven shows, it's like I had to do the thing where I was convincing the promoter again. I had to kind of lie, like, hey, so I noticed you guys are a dive bar, you know, and the Tuesday nights look really shitty here. So what do you say we
bring some people in this motherfucker?
Have a metal show here on Tuesday night.
Imagine how I felt when I had to go to the city planners and parks and recreation guys for like Ukiah for like for the second metal fest we did in downtown Ukiah outdoors in the plaza. And I had to go there and sit with like the chief of police and like, you know, you know, and they asked me, well, what are you doing? And we were like, well, we're going to do this, you know, Redwood Metal Fest. And they were like, well, explain what it is. And we're like, you know, heavy metal. And I remember Jake King, he said, you know, it's like rock and roll. And like, we literally lied and told him it was a rock and roll show so that we could do Redwood Metal Fest. And then of course, you know, after Redwood Metal Fest was done that first time in the plaza outdoors on a Saturday, like next to the churches and, you know, the courthouse and all that good stuff, man, the Monday we had to go in and turn the keys in. Boy, they were pretty unhappy about it. Yeah,
it was rock and roll.
Yeah, but you know, the thing is
heavy rock and roll.
Yeah, right. I just look at it as like, you know, Embryonic Devourment, bands like yours, like Embryonic Devourment, you know, Goreskin Coffin, you know, these really hard, just heavy, brutal, grinding bands. It is hard to find a place for those bands, or at least then it was harder than it is now. But it's still kind of difficult because like there's, you know, it's I don't want to label it and call it niche, but it is kind of niche, you know, and it's difficult to, when you look at like where we're at in Mendocino County, it's hard to pair bands with bands when there's this sound and make it a relevant show. So it is difficult, but the reality is here you guys are, you know, all these years later, you know, like,
thanks, man,
you know, like whatever adversities really didn't fucking matter. You know, it really didn't.
We played shows with all punk bands on the bill and stuff like that.
Those are the best shows, I think. A multi-genre bill, because you have the chance of expanding your style, and somebody in the punk crowd is gonna be like, I really dig that death grind band, and vice versa.
Exactly.
I mean, it's
we did that a lot with the emo crowd, and we wanted nothing to do with those guys, but we played these bills where there's all these emo bands that were Modesto playing down
with Laura Donna.
Yep.
Bands, right? So we're playing with these guys. We were just like, felt completely out of place. But I mean, I think we obtained, and our goal was to try to get just 10% of that crowd to come to the dark side, every time we played those kind of shows.
Pretty much. Yep.
And I think we did that. I think we got the respect from a lot of different bands and a lot of different genres that are kind of cliquey. Because we just didn't give a shit. We were like, whatever, we're gonna come up here and shred your faces off and leave. Whatever.
Back then it was very DIY. It was like, hey, we really like Deeds of Flesh, so we're gonna book a show with them. Fuck it, we'll pay their guarantee. We'll have Deeds of Flesh come up. We'll pay their guarantee just so we can play a show with them. Back then we just would make shit happen. And with Bryon coming on the scene, now the Mendocino County scene is really
it's really
taking
grown.
shape. You've created a scene here, Bryon, with all your shows, believe it or not, man. I mean, we had a cult little following, that was happening in Mendocino with both Embryonic and Mummification. But having, somebody who's actually putting together stuff regularly, bringing people together, has created an actual family type of scene here, man. It's really cool.
Well, it was always my mission was to try to do things that like almost seemed impossible. Like it was almost like an impossible task, but try to make it happen. It's, to me, it was great that we had local bands like Embryonic Devourment and other bands that were just as hungry for more music and more bands to come to the area. Because let's face it, we didn't get a lot of those big bands weren't stopping here, and we weren't doing like big shows or anything like that. And so, to me, that's what we needed to do so that our music in Mendocino County could expand beyond Mendocino County. We needed people to come here and see what we were doing so that they could go elsewhere and talk about it and invite us to go other places and to bring bands in and send them out.
I've seen that happen, man. Shows you booked, that DRI show in Willits,
that was amazing.
Great show, and the band was really happy. And how many more times have you booked them now?
I think I've booked them 8 or 9 times at this point.
Yeah.
DRI loves Mendocino County, and a bunch of other bands too, big bands. They love coming through this area, and it's mainly because they're treated well, and that has a lot to do with the promoter who's putting things together and making sure that they're taken care of. Man, you've done a killer, excellent job on that.
Let me say that none of it would be possible if I didn't have the cooperation of everybody that's involved in the shows. I mean, let's face it, I make phone calls. I call people and ask them to do things, and they either say yes or no, and then I got to pay them for it. That's literally what I do. To me, it's easy. It makes it easy, and it makes it a pleasure, and it makes it fun when we have everybody that's sort of family-like and wants to support each other and be a part of working together to make things happen.
Yeah.
We could all collectively give Mendocino County a horrible reputation for being a bunch of assholes and people that don't pay their bills and being disrespectful, but we don't do that. And I think that's where
the occasional bill, but
occasional, yeah, but that's for fun, right?
We had our haters at the beginning, though, man. Believe that. We had haters, and we started traveling outside of Mendocino County
to get our respect.
And we traveled further than most to make, and we got Mendocino known. I mean, and Mummification did too, respectively. For
somewhat, but it was Embryonic Devourment that really put it on the map, so to speak.
Well, the cool thing is that with Mummification, we started generating those contacts where, hey, Mummification played Gathering of the Sick, and we got on with Frank up in Seattle, Washington, and I was able to utilize those connects with Embryonic as well, and just boom, shit started fucking clicking, really fast.
We were willing to take our brand wherever it had to go, though, and we did, and we created that as far as bands being known out of a place where everybody, it's known for reggae and bluegrass and light rock. It wasn't known for brutality. Everybody thought it was all hippies and dreads and shit, so for the most part it was, besides us.
Well, to me, where it's relevant, all of that comes full circle for me, is that just that in itself, like that wisdom, that knowledge of the things that you guys have learned along the way and that you maintain and now you exude, that's the mentality that I appreciate. And, like I said, I listened to your journey and now I understand why you guys are so, I guess from my perspective, easy to work with, is because we're on the same wavelength as far as what needs to be done to progress. You guys took a different journey to get there than I did, but we've all kind of arrived at this same point where, I could explain it away, but the reality is that I appreciate it. And now I understand a lot more of where it comes from. So it makes me appreciate it more. So I'm happy to be a part of it. Most definitely.
Hell yeah, man. There's no other person that we'd, have be as, the chief on, the listening of the story, firsthand, other than you, Bryon. I mean, you really have a lot to do with this scene. And like I said, have really created, had a lot to do with the creation of the scene out here, as far as what it's become now.
Definitely took it to the next level.
Yeah,
Well,
you did, man.
Being able
deeply, you got to care about something deeply. You got to care about something more than yourself. You got to understand that you're one lonely speck of light.
That's a fact.
Nothing by yourself. And that's, you've got to join together with other likenesses, in that same collaboration, back to that being telepathic or and you have to think multidimensional to even like metal. I think you have to understand that there's something different out there, and it's okay. You don't have to be afraid of it. It's not all about devil worshiping and all this bullshit.
Yeah.
But it really robs a lot of amazing musicians of the kudos they deserve.
But you see, like, where the correlation there is that whether you're playing in a band, being the musician or the person promoting it, or the venue that's hosting it, or the guy that's selling tickets, or the guy that's at the door, checking IDs or whatever it is.
We're like a clump of cells.
For everybody to be in that same mentality of wanting to see it succeed and to see that that's what makes all of this work. So thank you guys. For
problem, but if you write it, they will come. If you create it, they'll come to see it.
Exactly.
And it may take time, but you think of I always thought of us as like the great classical composers, and where we wrote, as far as strings, wrote kind of on the same lines as playing, 32nd notes and 16th notes and 60, but then we added a drummer that was matching every note that we were playing, and it was just this, like I said, this huge symphonic kind of experience. It was, I think, what we did.
Here's what I would say is Luke is not a drummer. He's a percussionist.
No,
He
for
really
sure.
is.
He's
Yeah.
a percussionist.
I'm definitely not a drummer. I'm some guy.
Well, and I say that with all utmost respect.
So do
because-
I. He's more
because
related
it-
to jazz, than
Yeah.
he would be to any normal,
right.
metal drummer. I would think. I mean, just from my
Well,
perspective.
just his accent and his,
Austin's been more trained than any of us in music, actually, like musically trained by his father, which is a great musician as well.
Yeah.
And,
Ronnie Lee Spence.
well, it gave Austin a different kind of a perspective. He didn't fall into the box, which I was glad to see. He took the knowledge Dad gave him, and he took it to some completely different fucking place with his music style. So, but he still understood the fundamentals that you need to know. And sometimes when those aren't taught, it takes a little bit longer to learn them when you're trying to do it by yourself. Luke and I were trying to do that shit by ourselves. I never had anybody teach me how to play guitar, or I just had something in mind, and we, like, in any kind of, if you want to be in any kind of professional setting, you study those people, you watch them, you take in what they're doing, how they're acting, how they present themselves, how they play, and you try to learn from that. That's how we learn. I mean, we watching videos and and not anything like we have now on the internet, but just learning by trying.
I think that's what was so impressive about you guys right before I had rejoined was the fact that you guys kind of disappeared for a second, went into a little box and came out with this whole set of new songs and a whole new sound. Even I was like, what the hell? Even after jamming with you guys in Ye Old Scabbard, I was like, are these the same musicians even?
Right.
I mean, you guys had really turned into something else. It went from something like old school Opeth to Nile and Deeds of Flesh, in a matter of a year, which was pretty incredible, man. Pretty fucking incredible.
I mean, we worked hard, man. Luke and I, we spent most every day of our lives in that studio. And I mean, Luke basically lived in the studio at times, and
for like 2 years straight. Almost.
Yeah. We played. We just played constantly. We just looked at each other. Was like, fuck it, let's try those riffs, or let's try this, or I'd have something to be like, yeah, let's try to get this thing down, or whatever. And we just play, and we'd play all fucking day. It didn't matter to us. Smoke bong rips, play Xbox.
Yeah, hell yeah.
Play
I
death metal.
love those days, man. I remember nothing was off the table. We'd do mushrooms, acid, smoke pot, we'd drink. Fucking, I was so drunk, fucking puking everywhere one time, and the only thing that was there to save me was you, Lauren.
Well,
Yeah, hey, one thing I was
on tour a few times too, if I remember right.
Well, I always felt,
Yeah, that happened on tour numerous times.
yeah,
I learned my lesson.
that was part of my role in the band, though, is to watch over my brothers and make sure they were all safe. And now that you guys couldn't handle yourselves separately, it wasn't about that. It was just
Oh, I know.
role was, and you guys know that shit. If anybody would have fucked with you, it wouldn't have been, it would have been all over with. But that's a bond we had, though, and we went through a lot of different shit together out on the road, where most bands would have broke up several times and probably never got back together, but somehow we'd have these huge blow-ups and then just come back to like when we got on stage, it's like nothing ever fucking happened. Tap 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 tap, go. It was just it
was more than just a bunch of musicians fucking hanging out and playing together. We were friends. We lived in the same area where like we see each other, almost every day.
There's another thing to that, which is like, after you're in the van with, your fellow bros 8 hours a day, fucking smelling each other's farts and fucking, hating on each other, getting in arguments and all kinds of stupid shit. By the time you go up on stage, you're so pissed off and over it that everything is like, there's no room for error. If you don't play your shit right, you're going to hear it from your band members. They're going to be like, you fucked it up tonight, motherfucker. Like,
The thing about touring is that it's a bipolar experience.
For sure.
And you're going to, when you spend that amount of time in the van with these, 3 or 4 people, you're going to see every single part of their personality, and you're going to experience it directly in some way, shape, or form.
Well,
and so it's how you deal with that, and how much, how well you understand each other, and how well you understand the touring experience and what you're going through, and hopefully you don't hate each other after you're done.
Yeah.
Well, we'd usually take a couple weeks off after the tour and just be like, okay, I gotta decompress and
There was
get my shit together.
Although
there was a very symbolic moment people should know about that I just want to mention. There was this one time we were on tour, and all of us decided we're going to get an embryonic devourment tattoo. That was like, we had already been through hell and back, numerous tours before that even, and by this point, it was just like, that was some cool brotherhood type stuff. I just wanted to point a memory back at that, man. That was cool.
No, it was cool. And I remember we were running out of time, so I had to get parts of my tattoo done in 2 different states. I got part of it done somewhere. Where did you get yours done, Luke?
We were in, it wasn't Philly, it was Pittsburgh.
Oh, yeah, that's right.
Pittsburgh.
Yep.
It was at that show that the original drummer for Immolation was at.
Yeah,
Sure.
And then I got part of mine done there because all of a sudden we get a call and it's like, where the fuck's Luke? And then he's like, I'm fucking down here getting a tattoo. And we're like, fuck you. What?
Hey guys, it looks like I got to wrap it up here because they only allow so long for these Zoom episodes. But it's been awesome talking with you guys. Another successful podcast, and Lauren, we'd love to have you back. You know, whenever you want to be on this thing, man. You know, you can totally come on.
There's my cat right there.
There you go. Sure.
Hell yeah, that's sick, man.
Next time, everybody should show their tattoos.
Sure, we definitely have endless stories to go through. All right, man. Hey, it was good talking to you guys. Good seeing all you guys. Thanks.
Yeah, definitely, dude.
Hell yeah. Take it easy, man.